Good evening, everyone. Urab Desai with the tropical update for Monday, September 17th, 2018. What a difference a day makes as we look at the tropical Atlantic right now. There's really not much to talk about, whereas yesterday we had three active systems at the same time. Today we only have one depression, one area of potential development, and the remnants of former Hurricane Florence, of course. If we take a look at the 5-day tropical outlook from the National Hurricane Center, you can see that we have Tropical Depression Joyce here, which is forecast to dissipate soon enough. Remnants of Florence here, which are now in West Virginia and moving northeastward. And this disturbance, which is the remnants of once Hurricane Isaac, which is only forecast right now to have a 10% chance of development. So things have definitely started to quiet down after a very busy past 2 weeks, which is definitely good news. If you look at Tropical Depression Joyce right now, you can see that it's being continued to be sheared apart by very high wind shear of up to 40 to 50 knots in that area, and the water temperatures are also very cold. And as you can see on the satellite image, the center of circulation is completely exposed, with all the thunderstorms being far away and well to the right of the center, which means that the storm is definitely very disorganized right now, and it probably will dissipate soon enough. If you look at the National Hurricane Center track, they do have the storm dissipating into remnants as early as tomorrow morning into tomorrow afternoon. And then it will slowly start moving south, and it's not forecast to redevelop anytime soon or impact any land at all, so we don't have to worry about it at all. If you look at the remnants of Isaac now, whatever's left of it, you can see that there is some thunderstorm activity here just east of Jamaica, and it's also impacting Jamaica with some heavy rain. However, these thunderstorms are very disorganized, and it's not forecast to redevelop anytime soon. However, if you do look at the shear map right now, Isaac is right here in the middle of this area of heavy shear of 30 knots and favorable wind shear 5 to 10 knots here just to its west. So once it gets into this area and then it goes into the Gulf of Mexico and around this region, it should be able to start getting organized if it's able to redevelop, and it could possibly re-strengthen. If we look at the model tracks, all the models do have it eventually making its way in somewhere into the Gulf of Mexico, whether it be the South Gulf or the northern part of the Gulf. Now, if it does take this southerly track, it will encounter more wind shear once it passes the Yucatan. So if it takes the southerly track, then it's probably not going to redevelop. However, if it does take some more northerly track and heads towards Louisiana and other places here along the Gulf Coast, then it could possibly re-strengthen into at least a tropical depression, possibly a tropical storm. If you look at the model intensity forecasts now, you can see that the models are pretty split 50-50 on the intensity of Isaac, as several models do have it staying weak and not redeveloping at all, and several models also do have it re-strengthening into a tropical storm. A couple of models even do have it reaching hurricane strength in about 5 days' time. So we still do have to watch Isaac. However, the chances that it will redevelop look less and less likely as more time passes on. However, people along the Gulf Coast should continue to watch Isaac. Now, if you look at whatever's left of the remnants of Hurricane Florence, Florence has now finally been downgraded to remnant low as of yesterday afternoon. The center of the remnants is now somewhere here along the southern part of West Virginia, and most of the rain and thunderstorm activity is now into Virginia here, and it's providing some heavy rain still here in Virginia, and some rain also associated with the remnants of Florence are impacting areas of Pennsylvania and into New Jersey and New York now. And if we look at the rainfall totals from Florence, what we've been seeing in North Carolina the past several days has just been absolutely mind-boggling. As we look at some of these totals, Swansboro, North Carolina, had 33.89 inches, so basically 34 inches of rainfall in a 48-hour period from early Friday to Sunday afternoon, which is absolutely insane. And if you can see some of these other readings, Hoffman Forest 29.5 inches, Sunny Point 27 inches, Morehead City / Newport had 25 inches. These are all above 2 feet. 4 areas here recorded above 2 feet, and other areas also had above 20 inches, such as Cedar Point and Emerald Isle. And look at the rainfall totals in South Carolina. Areas in South Carolina also received quite a bit of rain, with 16 inches in Chesterfield, 18.13 inches in Marion, 16.44 inches in Carolina Sandhills, and many other areas also in both states had very heavy rainfall. So Florence has definitely made its mark and has definitely dropped some historic and record-breaking rainfall amounts, and along with that also provided historic flooding. And there have sadly been 25 deaths now reported, directly or indirectly associated with Florence, and that number may continue to rise as officials do investigate further. And now the rains of Florence are going to impact areas in the northeast. If we look at the track models now for Florence, very interesting seeing what's going on with the models, as there are some models that still do take it out to sea after it's done impacting the northeast. However, many of these models now do have showing this southward turn after 2 hour 48, so about after 2 to 3 days from now, and they do have it making a loop and then ending up somewhere here in the southwestern Atlantic Ocean. This would be very bad. The good news, however, is that most of the models do not have it re-intensifying. If you look at the intensity forecast now, most of the models do have it maybe slightly strengthening. It might become a depression or a weak tropical storm again if it gets into that area. One model does have it approaching hurricane strength again, but that's an outlier and that's unlikely to happen as the waters have cooled down significantly due to upwelling from Florence itself as it stalled over the Carolina coast for several days. And also the wind shear patterns have become unfavorable. If you look at the wind shear map here, the area that Florence will be heading into, the remnants of Florence, has now been covered with wind shear of 30 to 40 knots, so it's unlikely that it's going to redevelop. However, excuse me. However, it will definitely, if it does take one of these paths, especially if it takes this kind of a path and then it loops back and impacts North Carolina again, that's just going to add insult to injury, as it's going to give them even more rain that they definitely do not need. So it's crazy to say this, but the impacts of Florence may not still be over yet, as if it does take this kind of a track, if it does end up managing to loop around, then you could be seeing even higher rainfall totals in North Carolina. We'll have to wait and see what happens with the remnants of Florence as time moves on. Now, looking at the more recent, the more short-term impacts of Florence into the northeast, we can see that the next couple of days it does show Florence. You can see this path here, about 2 to 3 inches of rain here, going into Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire. That does show the rains of the remnants of Florence. So it could be experiencing some locally heavy rainfall here in this area. And if you look at the NAM model up to hour 42, it does show a similar pattern with heavy rains throughout this region in New York and Massachusetts and other parts of New England. However, the NAM does show even possibly more rain than the GFS, but some pockets here of up to 6 to 8 inches of rain. So Florence is still impacting other areas now with heavy rain. This is not going to be anything like the rains that we're seeing in North and South Carolina, fortunately. However, it is going to be some flooding possible here, especially since the grounds are saturated right now, as we've had a lot of rain in this area over the past month or so. So it's going to add more rain that they don't need, and it could add some more flooding. If we look at the European model now, over the next 5 days in the tropical Atlantic, we can see that it does show little to no activity. There is a low pressure area here that it might develop it eventually. However, it's not likely, and the European model does show that the tropics will be relatively inactive over the next few days, which is very good news for everyone, as we definitely need a break now after all this activity over the past several weeks. If we look at the GFS to compare, we can see that the GFS is similar. It does show a system developing here in the central Atlantic Ocean. However, it does not have it impacting land at all. It's just going to be meandering around here in the central Atlantic Ocean. So it's not going to impact any land, and that is definitely good news. If you look at the future forecast, though, for the next couple of weeks, the tropics, while they might be taking a break for the next few days, Tropics are forecasted to still at least remain active through the end of September into the beginning of October due to the MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, which is basically showing that conditions will become favorable wherever the MJO is positive, and the MJO is forecast to become positive in regions 8 and 1 here, which is the Western Hemisphere and Africa, which is, of course, the Atlantic Basin that covers the Atlantic. So the MJO is still forecast by the GFS. This is it's still forecast to remain active, so that should be giving favorable conditions for the Atlantic Ocean, which means lower wind shear and less dry air. So the conditions will still be favorable for tropical development, at least for the end of this month and the beginning of October. The next update will be posted probably tomorrow. However, there will probably not be as many updates when the Atlantic is not active, as there's not as much to talk about. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to be doing with my uploading pattern, as this is a new channel. But talk to you guys soon.